Good day to all my listeners out there. I'd like to welcome you to Is Your Way in Your Way? And my name is Cassandra Crawley Mayo, and I'm your host. And for those new listeners out there, let me tell you what this is all about. It's actually, and I want you to think, are you in your way of doing things that you wanted to do, some of your dreams, your aspirations, get a promotion on your job, write a book, be a speaker, be a TV talk show host, anything. There's nothing impossible out there. The sky is the limit. And if in fact it is, then you are in the right place. And we talk about topics related to personal and business development. And today I have a special guest on that's going to talk about embracing the big boulders in life. And her name is Meridith Alexander. Welcome, Meridith.
Woohoo! Thank you so much for having me, and hello to all of you out there who are joining us. We're so excited to have you.
Well, thanks for being on the show today. Before we get started, I just want to read your bio for my listeners, so they'll kind of get a little background on you before we take our deep dive. Meridith Alexander is a best-selling author, a top female motivational speaker, Chief Empowerment Office of GRIT Mindset Academy, and GRIT stands for growth, resilience, intuition, intention, or intuition, or transformation. And I love that acronym for that. She's the founder of the EPIC You Re-Evolution movement, regularly featured on Forbes Coaches Council and featured in global media around the world. She has helped thousands of individuals make over their lives, both personally and professionally, whether the objective is to change the career paths, launch a new business, or unleash a life that feels is booyah epic. This woman says that her real business is helping people come alive. And again, our topic is embracing the big boulders in life. So, Meridith, before we talk about your darling daughter, Skylar, and we're going to talk about what occurred with Skylar, and probably I would say it has a lot to do with where you are today. Yes. I'd like to know, and my audience would like to know, what was life like before your youngest daughter's, who's Skylar's, accident? What was life like then?
Oh, I am so glad that you asked that question because it's really interesting. I think that before we have a pivotal moment in our life, we often think that it's thanks to or as a result of that pivotal moment that profound changes happen. What I learned is that all the changes, this beautiful recipe, before the cake went in the oven, it was all these things that were transpiring before that, including some of the things before this that I knew intellectually, spiritually, that I should be able to forgive or even possibly feel grateful for. That wasn't happening. All I knew around those topics was pain, frustration, confusion, despair. So I had been a single mom, an entrepreneur for the majority of my life. I raised 3 children. Even though my business was doing well, I just felt like I was constantly chasing this more perfect version of myself. I surely could make more money. I surely could be a better mom. I surely could be more present for my children. I surely could this, that, or the other.
Right.
And it was incredibly hard on my self-esteem. I made some terrible relationship choices. I had some partnerships in business that caused me to take a huge hit. So it was just like, if you believe in the diamonds in the flame, it was flame after flame after flame after flame. So even though superficially out in the world, I might have looked like Wonder Woman.
Right.
When I would crawl into bed at night, I would just think, oh my gosh, I am going to look back on my life one day and feel like I've never truly lived.
Oh.
And that became an incredible fear.
Mm-hmm.
And yet at the same time, it was hard not to align myself with what I think we women sometimes, without even knowing it, are programmed to believe. And I believe that sometimes we're groomed to believe that a man's worth is measured by his achievements. A woman's worth is measured by her sacrifices and how much she's willing not to achieve under the label of doing it for others.
Okay.
And so there was a feeling for me of again, just not enoughness and unworthiness. My self-esteem, my confidence was super low. So here we go to 2016.
Okay.
My youngest daughter has finally graduated from Yale.
Yeah.
So all my kids are doing really, really well.
Okay.
And I'm finally starting to breathe. I've got my business. I'm not in love with it. And I'm kind of wondering, will I ever find my passion? Will I ever find my purpose? Oh, well, there'll be time for that. Let's just keep going out there and making money, right? So I was focused on making a living and forgetting to choose that I really needed to figure out how to come even more alive.
So Meridith, let me ask you, once your daughter, you were an empty nester, everybody's gone, everybody's doing well. So am I hearing that you were still kind of feeling worthless?
Absolutely.
You were still feeling that way, like you weren't good enough, and those what I call saboteurs were all in your way. Okay.
Oh yes. Yes.
And you had the job, the entrepreneurship, and you basically had what you wanted, but there was still something there that wasn't. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And here's what's interesting, and you just absolutely nailed it, is what I find now when I work, especially with women, but it's true for men as well, is that there tend to be two flavors of clients. One, the one who feels like I'm not at all where I thought I would be right now in my life, and I have no idea how to change that. And the other, which sometimes can feel even more painful, is I'm exactly where I thought I would be, but I don't feel like I was promised I would be feeling right now.
Okay.
And so I was kind of a typical high achiever where it was never enough, Cassandra. It could never be perfect. And even though, ironically, for my business and out of curiosity, I had always pursued, literally since I was in my teens, the big question of how to choose to live, I still bought into the belief that somehow magically and mysteriously, when things come together in my outer world, when I get my relationships right, when I get my finances to wherever magically that number is,
that's right,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then I will wake up one morning and I will feel like, oh my gosh, I'm happy.
Right, I'm finally there.
Yes, I'm happy. Woo! It's kind of like the happiness diploma that you believe is somehow going to go on the wall, right? And so there I was on this busy Friday afternoon, February 19th, 2016. And it was at the start of my busy season. Now, understand that I was in an industry, the performing arts, where every single penny of our annual income came in a span of 4 months. So we had to write every contract that we would write for the year, make every single sale between the beginning of January and the beginning of May. And so it was February 19th. So things were just starting to pick up speed. So it was I prepped myself for a nice 10-hour day.
Okay.
For some crazy reason, about 10:30, 11, I started uncontrollably yawning. It was the weirdest thing. I was just overwhelmed with fatigue.
Okay.
So I thought, oh my God, this cannot be. I have, time's a wasting. And so I got up, I threw water on my face. I looked in the mirror.
Yeah.
And my eyes were all puffy. Now, there was no logical explanation for it. So I thought, I'm going to just power through this. Got a coffee, sat back down. I'm yawning. And finally, I just said, you know what? I can't fight this. I will go and take a 15-minute cat nap. Surely that will do it. So at noon, I put my head on the pillow. At 3 p.m., my eyes pop wide open. Now I'm panicked. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did that happen?
Yeah.
I go running downstairs. Speaking of doggies, I grab the leashes for my girls and I get ready to run outside. And the phone rings. And I look at the number. And it's the weirdest number. It's clearly international. And I never get international calls. But something inside me knew that I had to pick up. And I tell you, Cassandra, and if you're listening, if you've ever had one of these moments in your life, it's that premonition. You just know that your life is about to change.
Yeah, something's up.
And so the moment that I opened up that phone and put it to my ear and heard the first inhale, I knew that I was stepping into a place where I had never been before. And this tiny little voice on the other side of the line said, I don't know how to tell you this, but Sky's been in a devastating accident. You have to get down here to Colombia, where 3 doctors are going to do their best to keep her alive.
And this is in Columbia, Ohio. Columbia.
South America. Yes. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Right. Yes. So you can imagine the thoughts that were racing through my head. So a boulder that had probably been attached to the side of a mountain for millions of years chose the moment when my sweet daughter was beneath it to break loose and come catapulting down and fall. It cracked open her skull. It crushed her lungs, fractured her spine, fractured both scapula, snapped her thigh, pulverized her left ankle. I mean, she had 4 injuries that were considered unsurvivable. And I was getting the call to say, basically, get down here right away.
Oh my gosh. So my other question is, first of all, there was a premonition that she wasn't going to make it. Is that correct?
Well, here's the interesting thing, Cassandra. I realized, having spent decades, which I believed was just a curiosity for me. It goes back to where we started our conversation, where nothing in your life is accidental. I believe to the deepest core of my essence that even before I came here, I had picked out my passion, my purpose. And I believe that we have one goal and one goal only, and that is to be taking our final breath, saying, oh my gosh, this was epic. I hope I get the chance to do this again. So I believed that my passion, my desire to explore and discover my potential here on this glorious planet, but more importantly, to really impact the other lives that are here in a positive way. But in order to really do it at a profound level, that meant that I had to endure things
Mm-hmm.
that I would never intentionally subject on myself. So it goes back to this ironic sense of ask and it is given. So the abusive relationship that I had been in at one point, the financial terror that I had been on when I was double crossed by a business partner and had to come up with $100,000 in 1 week.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Moments like that,
Yeah.
had I not felt the exact emotions that I had felt, I would not have been driven to ask the questions, to let go of things that were keeping me playing small. So as a result, for decades, I had really focused on how some people learn to play the inner game to win. And
Mm-hmm.
they face these incredible boulders,
Mm-hmm.
not usually literal boulders,
Right.
but
Mm-hmm.
everyone has their own boulder.
Yes.
And ironically, to your podcast title, I
Mm-hmm.
believe that the ultimate clue is in the word boulder itself. In other words, when you take the you
Right.
out of the boulder, in other words, when you get out of your own way,
Yes.
then and only then is that bigger boulder version of yourself recognizable and embraceable.
So this accident with your daughter, your younger daughter, Skylar, um, did things change for you right away, or the way you were feeling once you saw her? Like, did your mindset change? Did you start feeling sorry for yourself? Was it like, oh me, how can this happen to me? What were your thoughts doing this? Because this was catastrophic.
I love this question because it is so profoundly important. And so there was a moment of why me, but it
Right.
wasn't like you just explained it.
Okay.
It was, why did my daughter end up with me as her
Mhm.
mother? She needs someone who
Mhm.
has this epic version of herself, who
Mhm.
has more wealth than I have right now,
Mhm.
who has more ability to navigate these things, maybe who even speaks Spanish, because
Yeah.
this is happening in Colombia. Someone who can create a miracle for her in this moment. And I felt like I can barely figure out me. Once again, it was
Mhm.
that not enoughness.
Mhm.
However, here's just the lusciousness of the thing is, because this had not happened in Tampa where I live,
Mhm.
it took me almost an entire day to get to her. So rather than arriving like this hysterical second victim
Yeah.
of this boulder,
Yeah.
I had to get on a plane,
Yeah.
surround myself in darkness at
Mhm.
30,000 feet.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I can tell anyone who's listening, there is no better place to ask yourself some really powerful questions. And
Mhm.
by the way, notice that in the word power, and you can
Mhm.
tell I'm a wordy here,
Yeah.
in the word power, there is no me, there is only we.
Mhm.
And so I had to figure out how much power I was willing to give this boulder and what I was going to make it mean
Mhm.
in the context of not only my life,
Yes.
but Skylar's life and potentially her legacy. Because
Yeah.
understand, at this point, she had already done more to positively impact the world. She'd been to 5 out of the 7 continents. She
Mhm.
taught English in Tanzania. She'd been
Mhm.
to Nepal. She'd been to Croatia,
Yeah.
Ecuador, Peru, all over. She'd
Yeah.
done more than most people do in
Sure.
80. So
Mhm.
was I going to diminish that and instead
Mhm.
identify myself going forward
Mhm.
as simply the mother of a child who'd been tragically killed by a boulder? Or would I protect the fire that could never be taken away from me unless I released it. Of those years, those 22 years that we had as a we together. I was not the person I was before she came into my life. And the only way I would become someone less than was if I relinquished it. So instead, for my child, I made 2 commitments. One, I would find this epic version of myself for her. I would be someone who can, if it's possible, trigger miracles. And I would step forward, regardless of what happened, as the mother of a child who had achieved in 22 years what most of us dream of achieving in 80.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely. She's done a lot. Right. Yeah. And so by her accomplishing so much within that 22 years, what was your, because on your way there, they told you what happened. They perhaps described to you what happened. So what were you expecting when you got there?
So interestingly enough, once I made the commitment to find that epic version of myself, I started actually in a different place. I started asking myself some questions that would empower me. And so I realized that I definitely could not control most of the things in the outer game.
Yes.
That was beyond my power.
Right.
But I started looking back the decades and decades, everything from energy to law of attraction to neuro-linguistic programming, all of it. And said, I may not be able to control the outer game, but I sure as heck can play a mean inner game. So it was interesting. One of the amazing angels that came into our life that was connected to us, who was from Colombia. She became like a sister to me. And when I had finally gotten to Colombia and was on the 4-hour drive to where this teeny tiny hospital was, she called me and she said, I want to brace you. There is no HIPAA in Colombia. And her cousin was a doctor. So he had been able to connect with the doctors at this tiny little hospital and actually see the x-rays, see the photographs of the injury, talk to them. And she said to me, now I just want to prepare you. Your sweet Skylar is going to look like a monster, but it is still your sweet daughter in there. And I had been able to inch myself so powerfully by asking different questions, questions that my mind could believe, that allowed me to believe that the impossible was possible, that miracles do happen every day. And if them, why not us? My instinct was to recoil when she said that and think, I will never be able to see my daughter as a monster. So what was interesting, before they showed us Skylar, they showed us the x-ray. They didn't show us the photograph of the wounds, thank goodness, but they showed us the x-ray. And Cassandra, what immediately popped into my mind was, I don't know if you've ever been to a museum of science and industry and seen the archaeological finds and the skulls and bones that were all cracked and shredded. I was looking at that at my daughter. But when I got to her bedside, to me, she looked like Mother Teresa. Her hair had all been shaved off. Bandage that was around her head. Her face was so swollen now.
Yeah.
She was unrecognizable, but she looked like this beautiful, peaceful little China doll.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And
Mhm.
from the very first moment, things that were impossible became I'm possible. And it honestly began to look as if life had to conform to this powerful vision
Mm.
that I don't care about medical precedent. My daughter will be fine, whatever fine in
Right.
this case is destined to be, even
Okay.
if that means that her little body can no longer join us.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. It was kind of like, I think you said something about a mindset. Um, it's kind of like we talked about you said the inner game is much more than a mindset.
Yes. Inner
Okay.
game, mindset is an element of it.
Right. Right.
Me, so m- mindset to me is an expression of language, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
so there are three elements
Uh-huh.
that if you're listening to this, if you do nothing else, I would say make today the day
Mm-hmm.
that you commit to becoming the sovereign of this one resource that you cannot delegate, you cannot automate it, and you cannot eliminate it, and that is your mind. And when I say sovereign,
Yeah.
I mean, think of the way you approach your external technology, your laptop.
Yeah.
You would consider yourself crazy if you did not take responsibility for using passwords
Mm-hmm.
and for using virus protection.
Right.
If
Mm-hmm.
I were to say to you, that's very untrusting, take it off, you would consider me mad.
Yeah.
And yet, we are trained that that's just the way I'm wired. In other words, my thoughts get to think me. And if I'm lucky, I can try to coping skill, figure out a mindset, unspoken word is temporarily, that
Yeah.
can help me through it instead of becoming the sovereign where you master three elements, your focus.
Mm-hmm.
What are you focusing on? The presence
Mm-hmm.
of what you want or the absence of the presence of what you want? Most of us spend hours and hours of our day identifying the things that are missing. When we even answer a question, where do you want to be a year from now? We
Yeah.
often respond by saying, I want to be making six figures because I'm not now. I want to be living in a bigger house because I'm not now.
Mm-hmm.
So our focus is completely on the lack, which
Mm-hmm.
puts us on the emotional frequency that pairs us with
Mm-hmm.
more lack.
Mm-hmm.
When we become the sovereign, we learn how to focus on the presence
Uh-huh.
of, of what we want. We
Okay.
learn to master our language so
Okay.
that our language monitors, triggers emotions, and emotions trigger the stories, the responses, and whether we're able to see opportunities or not. And then
Right.
the final element is really that ability to envision, right? The imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Often we use our imagination
Mm-hmm.
only to worry, fear, and self doubt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when you can focus on becoming, giving yourself permission, guilt free, to say that thought, I may not be able right now to avoid thinking it. I don't need to give it traction. You go into quarantine because you do not empower me in the direction that is to my benefit to go.
Okay, let's break this down.
Yeah.
So you're saying when you saw your daughter, you talked about the three elements, how you had to, like you said, it's beyond the mindset. And I'm asking this because many of my listeners have had tragedies and things that occur, boulders in their life. And this is an opportune time for them to hear from you in layman's terms,
Yes.
because a lot of the language you're speaking, some of my listeners aren't familiar with. You
Yes.
know, like
Yes.
the linear, you said something, the EFT, or it was something that you mentioned, the unconscious.
Neuro-linguistic
Yeah,
programming.
yeah, things like that. Because I want it, because we all have boulders, you
Yes.
know, and our boulders are, you know, they always say it's always somebody worse than you. I always hear that. Well, that doesn't really make me feel that better,
Right.
because it's my
Exactly.
thing. So I'm hurting.
Exactly.
So as my listeners um have boulders in their life and they confront it. So how are you saying, what are you saying to say, how can they, I don't know if it's make you feel better, or how do you get through it?
Sure. First of all, I recommend not trying to get to the bottom of it.
Uh-huh.
There is no bottom. Get
Okay.
beyond the things that are keeping you at the bottom, for
Okay.
one. But start with questions.
Okay.
Start, because the questions are the hands that will help you get out of the maze.
Like, well,
And
give us
what I
some
mean is
questions.
this.
Okay.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
First of all, start by asking yourself, what can I control?
Okay.
Because we often
Mm-hmm.
sabotage ourselves right from the beginning by thinking the only way out of this maze is to control things that I can't control.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
have to, first of all, get
Right.
our power back by saying there are things I can control.
That's good. Okay.
The second question is, what can my mind believe? Now,
Mm.
some of your listeners have probably heard the advice around manifesting, that
Mm.
to go and make an affirmation, fake it
Mm-hmm.
till you make it.
Right.
Go
Mm-hmm.
stand in front of the mirror and say, I am a money magnet,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
pay no attention to the fact that your mind is going, did you see the notification from the bank about that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
lack of
Mm-hmm.
funds there,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And your mind must believe it. So the unspoken next question
Okay.
attached to that is, well, how can I help my mind to believe things that are going to empower me? Now, once again, I'm going to encourage your listeners to look at the clue within the word empower.
Mm-hmm.
The me comes before the we. So before you can empower anyone else, anything else,
Mm-hmm.
you have to empower yourself. But
Right.
how do you get there?
Yeah.
It's in the mirror, not the finger. So
Okay.
don't be pointing and blaming.
Okay.
That's not your way through this.
Okay.
It's healing yourself and
Okay.
helping thought. So for me, for example, what could I get my mind to believe? Well, I'm sitting there on this plane and I have been told that I may not be coming back with the same daughter
Mm-hmm.
who flew down there. And so I started by saying, okay, what can my mind believe? Here's a great place to start. Don't start with yourself because you're tangled up in your own emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Start with other people. So my question became, has anyone else ever achieved something that everyone else on the planet was convinced was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was
Okay.
laughable, Cassandra, because I'm at 30,000 feet
Mm-hmm.
flying through the air in a metal tube.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, at some point, the very concept of flying in a plane was believed to be stark raving mad, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My mind could believe that. My mind was like, oh, yeah. And then it was a small step to, okay, so impossible things are happening every day. Phones, you look around us, our technology every single day.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So how about medical miracles? Well, look
Right.
at Hollywood. It's filled with those. So
Mm-hmm.
is it logical to believe that these things do exist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So did any of them have like a special designated angel or luck
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
skills or talents
Mm-hmm.
or access that I
Mm-hmm.
don't have?
Mm-hmm.
No. So what I was able to do was then go to the next question of what then might I be assuming that is not necessarily true? Well, I'm assuming that just because medical precedent says that nobody survives this,
Mm-hmm.
that it must be true. And yet, impossible things are happening every day. Medical miracles are happening
Mm-hmm.
on a regular basis.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
clearly, that truth maybe isn't quite so true. So if you are out there and you are going through, facing your own boulder,
Right. Mm-hmm.
get out of your own way by asking different questions. And here's your target. Just find one question that makes you feel just 1% better. Don't believe that you're going to go from total, I'm under the sheets in my bed, devastated,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to skipping out in the flower field like
Mm-hmm.
like some Disney superhero, right? That
Mm-hmm.
it won't happen that way. It's one tiny little step that your mind can get behind. And it starts with thinking about, has anyone else ever felt what I'm feeling right now? Who has
Mm-hmm.
gone on
Mm-hmm.
to live a life that is more epic than they ever would have imagined?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Right.
And is it logical to believe that they were just a chosen one, that they had something different, that
Mm-hmm.
they weren't feeling the level of pain and despair and hopelessness and whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is that, and loss and grief that I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling right now?
Right. Mm.
And inch yourself to the place where you can get to the place where your mind can believe maybe all they had in their corner was that they were willing to believe and keep going. They
Mm-hmm.
were willing to turn that pain into a purpose, into
Mm-hmm.
a passion, into something that celebrates the loss.
Okay. So the pain you endured, and I know it is because it's all a part of grieving.
Yes,
We grieve differently, and we grieve not
yes,
just if somebody passes, we grieve if we lose a job, within a relationship.
yes.
That pain you had has maneuvered you to a purpose. And usually, I hear a lot of people talk about when somebody passes away in their life,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I got to start living my life because life is short. How did you define, or how did you figure out what your purpose was based on what you've been through? It's just like my listeners perhaps have lost a job, lost a loved one, just confused about what they should be doing. How can they transcend that to a purpose?
It's not like the clouds open and the angels
Right,
sing
right,
and, a giant scroll is delivered. This is your purpose. You've earned
right,
it.
right.
Start by sharing your story
Mm-hmm.
with the objective of serving someone else. not feeding their fear,
right,
not feeding someone else's hopelessness, not from the perspective of, let me tell you how bad life really is, how unfair life is. No, no, no. Find the place where you can start asking questions. Where are the gems in my story that might help even one person? And the irony is, this goes back to the we in the word power. You will start getting reflections back to you of stories and ways that you have graced someone else's life in such a profound way that you never would have expected, that before you know it, you wake up one day and you go, oh my gosh, I didn't even see it. But it's that saying, what I am seeking so desperately has been seeking me the entire time.
Right. So much, it's kind of like you said, it's not just me, it's we. And if we get out of our way, get out of our head and see this as a way of using this to be of service to someone else, then we kind of forget about ourselves, because it's really not about us, even though we think things are really about us.
Right.
But our purpose here is to do something for others, you know.
Yes.
Right. So what you did was you started the Grit Academy. Did that manifest after your daughter?
It did. It did. And it was fascinating because as part of what I knew regarding law of attraction, which to me, the word attraction is a contraction for the words attracting the right action, the law of attraction. And so as part of that, that meant that I had to be the leader, the sovereign of Team Skylar. Gosh darn it, if we were going to create a miracle, I need everyone's help around the world. All these people that she knew, which meant posting, in my case, starting a page called The Sky is the Limit, SCHUY, like her name, that ultimately became my Sky is the Limit book. That instead of saying, oh my gosh, please pray for my daughter, and posting these pathetic pictures of her in the hospital, it was powerful pictures. It was, if you want to cheer for us, you go out there and you be that best version of yourself. You talk to people in the elevator. You live your dreams. You take chances, laugh, dance, get rained on, that kind of thing. So people started passing it around. And ultimately, as we got back to Tampa, as she had officially survived the unsurvivable, people started asking me to speak. I said, I'm not a speaker. I don't speak. I'm terrified of going on stage. They kept sharing stories. People started asking me to coach the formula that they had kind of seen in action. This isn't someone who was just talking about it. They saw it in real life unfolding. And they went, oh my gosh, I haven't seen it through this lens before. Can you teach it to me? And I said, I'm not a coach. That's not my career, my profession. But as more and more stories came back to me, I took a chance. I took a risk. And then when I made the commitment, then I invested in myself, which was equally scary. I learned the framework. How do I coach people so that they can get immediate value in the first session? How do I get up on stage and deliver a keynote that moves people, that makes them get out there and not just say, oh, I'm motivated, but no, I'm committed to take terror-evoking action in some cases.
So the grit, the formula that you use, the outcome is for individuals to embrace the big boulders in life so they can move on. What's
Absolutely.
uh-huh. Okay.
Absolutely. It is a framework for one,
Okay.
identifying not only where you are, but who you are. Most
Okay.
of us lose track of that. Then
Okay.
to reboot, recalibrate
Mm-hmm.
boulders that are in the way.
Yes.
And a lot of those are inner game. So get
Mm-hmm.
your inner game
Mm-hmm.
really honed up so that now you are thinking like the sovereign of your own mind, of your own life, that epic version of
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then now let's layer on some outer games skills. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're, professionally, personally, that could be anything from your daily routines, your personal empowerment system,
Mm-hmm.
to your marketing, your language. How do you take that into
Mm-hmm.
leadership? And so that really has become my passion. It's based on the Howard Thurman quote that says, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come even more alive, and you go do that, because what
Mm-hmm.
the world needs is people
Mm-hmm.
who become even more alive.
That's good. So, I usually ask my guests sometimes, what qualifies you to do this type of work? And you have actually have a story, so what you've done was utilize, I wouldn't say utilize, but based on what happened with your daughter, you saw that, hey, I can turn this around for other people because stuff's always happening. There are always boulders in our lives. We're always going to have trials and tribulations. So you are able to figure this thing out and serve
Yes,
others so they can overcome it as well.
absolutely. And this goes back to where you started this amazing conversation, that unbeknownst to me at the time, the decades and decades and decades of research, which I thought was just a passion, a curiosity, a
Mhm.
hobby,
Right.
ended up layering on so much inner game wisdom and strategy and expertise that by
Mm.
the time it came for me to take my
Yeah.
doctoral exam in the School of Hard Knocks,
Yes.
literally from that boulder,
Hmm.
I didn't have to get ready. I just had to stay ready.
Exactly. When the student's ready, the teacher appeared.
Yes.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yes.
So, okay. So, what I'd like for you to tell my listeners as we wrap up, my listeners are in their way.
Mhm.
And, there's things that they want to accomplish, their goals, their dreams, their even forgiveness, something
Yes.
that they need to forgive somebody about, or because that way they'll be released or open, have their own business, write their own book, be a speaker. And they're just like, it's just so, they're stuck. It's like, how can, it's kind of like your story in the beginning, like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but I'm just unsettled. Something's missing. Something's missing. What is it that you can share with my listeners that will enable them to embrace those boulders and start serving others?
I love it. So, first of all, devour as much wisdom and information and podcasts like this as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then get to the point where you're willing to embrace that, again, there is no me in power. There
Mm-hmm.
is we. There is a time where,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to compress years into months, into weeks, into days, and see those blind spots, strength is the ability to say, I'm ready to get help. I'm ready for the coach. I'm ready for
Mm-hmm.
the mentor. And most
Mm-hmm.
of all, I'm ready to believe in me. Right?
Okay.
A lot of people talk themselves out of
Mm-hmm.
getting in their own way,
Right.
because at some level they say, it'll never work for me.
Yes.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
different.
Yes.
You have to have the strength to say, I feel the unfamiliarity. I'm going to choose to do this anyway, because
Mm-hmm.
that is the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's understanding, finding some qualified person.
Yes.
Shockingly, this may not be in your household.
Right.
right?
Right.
Find the right person who can help you reconnect with
Mm-hmm.
not only where you are, but who you are.
Hmm.
And everything starts from there.
That's good, Meredith. That's great. How can my listeners get in touch with you?
So if you are on social media, I'm pretty much everywhere. The
Uh-huh.
trick is to remember that it is Meridith Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
Meredith has two eyes. So think of a human being,
Right.
two eyes. It's not
Right.
a traditional spelling. So look for me on social media. However, I'm going to call you out. If you
Mhm.
are listening this and if this has resonated, and especially if you're feeling that little bit of sandpaper kind of feeling like, ugh, maybe I have been getting in my own way.
Yeah.
I am going to challenge you
Mhm.
to right here, right now, go to my website, my coaching website,
Mhm.
Grit Mindset Academy, and find the link. In fact, I'll give you a secret entrance to that link right here, right
Oh,
now.
uh-huh.
And it's bit.ly/go epic now. Each of those words are capitalized. So bit.ly go epic now. I will personally
Mm.
get on a Zoom with you. We
Mhm.
will brainstorm and I will give you some ideas. Maybe I'll point you in a direction where that could be the next epic step for you. Maybe that next direction is me. I
Yeah.
don't know, but I am willing to invest in you because the universe and all of you who I call my global tramily,
Mhm.
tribe family, have
Mhm.
invested in me. So if you want to be at that place where you look back at your life knowing that you have given yourself the opportunity to fully live,
Yes.
that Zoom link is waiting.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Meredith. This was unbelievable. And my listeners, and I know you've gotten some nuggets and some gems from Meredith about your boulders because you have those boulders and you want to get those boulders out the way and embrace them first. Embrace them and try to identify who you are, whose you are, and what you believe that your purpose in life is, because we all have one. We all have a passion, even though some of us are trying to still figure that out. But Meredith has given you something that link that you can go in and have a discovery call with her. Please take advantage of it. And if you found this podcast to be of value, please subscribe and also forward this to your friends, individuals that you know that could benefit from it and benefit from embracing the big boulders in life. So Meredith, we could continue to talk, but we can't keep going like this. But I just want to thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your willingness to be on here, your openness, your candor. And I'm just grateful that not that what happened to your daughter, but you've taken that and you've done something great with it and gone and actually going to minister. I call it a ministry to the world. And that's what's important.
Well,
So
thank you so much for having me.
yes.
And those of you who have been following along to our conversation, celebrate yourself too. Take a hand and pat on your back because you are here, speaking of being here, for a reason, and we celebrate you and come back and join Cassandra. It's an amazing podcast and it's been
Thank
such
you.
an honor being here.
Thank you. Okay, listeners, as I always say, bye for now and God bless you.
Woo.